Okay, folks, time to get started. Welcome to 4 of 7 webinars this fall and 10, I guess, entirely through the year. So welcome to Upland Game Hunting. Tonight we have a large panel. Last night for the squirrel, it was just me, but we're very lucky tonight. We have Jim Burris, the founder and chairman of the Bird Dog Society. He is covering the hunting information. Hannah Plumpton, always a pleasure to have her, our WRC Upland Game Bird biologist. She'll be covering biology and Q&A related to biology. We also have William Lanton, District 6 Area 4 Sergeant, WRC Enforcement, and obviously laws and regs Q&A. And you got moi again, hunter engagement coordinator. I'm the MC and the question narrator at the end. I have a little bit of information up front with the regs, but other than that, you'll get most of those folks, and that's a good thing. So the webinar length, it's 1 hour long. It is recorded and distributed less than or equal to 2 weeks, sometimes longer, but I'm trying to get a push this year. Your link tonight does not automatically turn into the webinar recording. It goes in the cloud, has to be pulled from the cloud. And of course, that's, techie speaking, has to be processed into a YouTube, and then I will distribute them. The Q&A length is 30 minutes and questions in writing only. They must be topic specific, addressed at Q&A. Chat hand raising is not monitored. We want you to focus on the screen, not writing, except for at the end for Q&A. Please allow us to cover material before writing questions. A lot of times we cover the information right up front, but obviously if there is any lingering questions, we'll get those at the end, and there should be enough time. Please do complete our post-webinar survey. As with all Learn to Hunt programming, there is a survey to help us make it better. And so this year, as always, I try to do, you'll get the survey and the recordings. So even though you'll have to wait a little bit, we'll get them out ASAP. Our website has kind of a new facelift. Now it's .gov instead of .org. That will change, I think, in March. So kind of take a note of that. And whether it be that website or that Regs Digest, and you may see it again as the old Prego spaghetti sauce slogan goes, it's in there. Everything you need to know is in that Regs Digest online related to hunting. So always do your due diligence before you reach out with questions. We do appreciate that. And thanks for joining us tonight. So just a little bit about the future of Learn to Hunt. The future of Learn to Hunt is going to still be around, and it's going to be offered statewide. However, Deep James won't. I am retiring after this year. January 1st is official. It's been absolutely great to be here. It's been a heck of a ride. Can't say more about that. It'll still be the topics, upland game birds, turkey, etc. Keep an eye out for the programming on Go Outdoors. The spring may be a little bit slow, and that's because depending on how quick my successor gets hired. But I will say that the larger part of the Wildlife Education Division team will be picking up some of the slack initially. So this has been the greatest job ever. And I can honestly say that I look forward every day to waking up and being in here. And it's been very humbling with each event being the last this year. So I know you'll enjoy what's left, or at least I hope so. Laws and regs, keep it safe, legal, and ethical. I'm going to go over this relatively quick. And of course, I tend to be somewhat humorous, as you folks know, with a few zingers from now and then. But yeah, you'll find out. A sampling of NC Upland games, laws, and regulations. And you can see that's for the new Regs Digest. I use the college professor method. Even like in school, you basically go to school, the college professor will go over something, and then you'll be expected to review on your own. Hence, this is a snippet of some information. And again, as it goes with the old Prego spaghetti sauce, it's in the Regs Digest. And you always let your fingers do the walking first before a season. And I can tell you, when I go to multiple states, and of course, this wasn't my home state, I come from Pennsylvania, the first place I would go is the Regs Digest or online. So rabbits, October 13th to the 28th, you can see hunting, box trapping, no possession season limit. Quail, November 22nd to February 28th. 6 daily limit, possession 12, no season limit. October 13th, February 28 for grouse, daily limit 3, possession 6, season 30. Pheasant, see page 69 for statewide versus specific locations. Migratory and webless migratory, non-toxic chat only for waterfowl, not dove, but for waterfowl, non-toxic only, especially in the impoundments, and that is a federal law. So anywhere you're hunting waterfowl. Dove, September 1st, October 4, and then November 8th to 29th. You can see December 16th to the 31, daily limit 15. Woodcock, December 11th, January 31, daily limit 3. Common snipe, October 28th to February 28th, daily limit 8. So again, just a few I threw out. I read too much, but I will say when I updated the regs, and of course, since William's on in tune there, I just want to make sure that that season limit of 30 grouse is correct. William, is that true? If you have your Regs Digest in front of you.
Give me just 1 second here and I will.
Yeah, because I was updating them and I thought, wow, that seems a little heavy. So I'm liking to say it's okay, but if it was a typo from last year, but we just want to make sure so nobody like beats the biologist and calls Deet James up and says he was given not good information.
Yes, sir. It is a daily limit of 3, possession 6, and a season limit of 30.
There you go. I didn't think it was that high. That's great. Okay. And I could have asked, likely could have asked Hannah too, but I thought since we had a regs guy on, I would ask him. So yep, just making sure. I also, if you can't get a hard copy of the digest at your wildlife agent, you can always call us at our customer service number. It's easy to find on the website. And I like the flipping book, and you can actually take snippets from it. So it's really awesome, works really well. I prefer that really more than the e-regs. Hopefully I won't get in trouble for saying that, but I like a Regs Digest. In fact, I have a collection of them. So obviously finding out about waterfowl, you can go right to hunting there in that band. But when it comes to say even other species of wildlife, go to Wildlife and Habitat. I think it used to say species before. Now it says Wildlife and Habitat. So I went there to see the dove and mourning dove. And when you click on mourning dove, you'll get all kind of information, both regulations and history and things about biology and everything. So as it states there, folks, the season isn't started yet. So in short, fingers first, then boots or waders on the ground, especially since we're talking about like upland game. And in fact, this was waterfowl slides from last year, but it's kind of the same thing. You can go in there and you can look at whatever species of bird, including upland game. Hannah, you're up.
All right, thank you, Deet. So as Deet said, my name is Hannah Plumpton, and I am the upland game bird biologist for the state of North Carolina. And we're going to talk a little bit about some basic biology of a couple of our upland game birds. First up, we're going to talk about our northern bobwhites, also known as bobwhite quail. Our males have a black and white striped face, a white throat, chestnut body, and then in the spring and summer, they're the ones who are doing that classic bob white whistle call that we hear and where they get their name. Females are a little less showy than the males. They have a speckled buffy brown body. They have that buffy colored throat as well as the eye stripe. And these birds are fairly small. If you want to feel generous, they're about the size of a softball. Depending on who you say, they may be more baseball size, but they're fairly on the smaller side of birds. They have a wide range across North America. As you can see, they cover part of the Great Plains, our Midwest areas, and across the Southeast. And that's because they prefer a variety of habitats, particularly grasslands and rangelands. These are areas with lots of bare ground and have lots of forbs, or what we call broadleaf plants. Think your wildflowers. And these areas also have a bunch of shrubs or brambles for cover as well. Quail are a prey species, so they have lots of predators, so they rely on that cover. They can also be found in open woodlands, pine savannas, and agricultural areas. again, they can be found there, they can persist there, but they really prefer those grasslands and rangelands habitats. And because I'm a visual person, I want to kind of give you some visual cues. You know, these are heavily thinned woodlots with a lot of sunlight hitting the ground, open grasslands, fallow fields, field borders. Again, a lot of plant life and variety of plants on the ground. And this is for a couple different reasons. They tend to feed in flocks other than the breeding season, and then they're walking on the ground with their head down. And so you're looking at the vegetation structure, typically about 6 inches to the ground level for them. And they don't really have very strong legs, so they can't really dig through vegetation to reach seeds and food under it. So they really want that bare ground so they can easily access their food, which includes a variety of seeds, including ragweed, grass, pine seeds, some of the smaller acorns if they're feeling adventuresome, legumes. They'll do insects and berries, and then their chicks feed primarily on insects. They're going to do a lot of growing and growing several sets of feathers their first few weeks of life. So they really rely heavily on that high protein diet that the insects provide. In fall and winter, they spend their times in groups. We call these coveys. They'll roost on the ground at night and in outward facing circle. This is for 2 different reasons. One is that they're keeping warm on those colder nights, and 2, they're facing outward because they're looking for predators and everyone's got eyes everywhere looking to help keep them safe. In the springtime, they'll break up and do fighting for mates and courtship displays before they pair off. And then they'll nest in what we call dense vegetations, often at the base of a bunch grass or somewhere thick. They'll do a shallow depression on the ground, line it with leaves and grass, and then they'll weave a nice little arch to hide the nest. You can kind of see that arch in that top left photo. They'll lay about 12 to 16 eggs and incubate for about 3.5 weeks. The young are hatch and they're born precocial, which means they're like chickens, so their eyes are open, fluffy down, up and ready and walking shortly after hatching. And then because of that high protein diet and those flight feathers, they'll be starting to make short flights at 1 to 2 weeks old. All right, the next one we'll talk about is ruffed grouse. So ruffed grouse are an intricately barred and spotted plumage. It comes in grayish brown, reddish brown, or tawny brown, depending on what habitat and where you're at. And then they have those ruffed brown or black neck feathers, which I'll show you in another photo where they come up. And that's where they get their name from, those ruffed feathers. And males will puff these out during their courtship display or during their territorial defense. So ruffed grouse have the widest range for a non-migratory game bird here in North America. And as you can see, we find them in the western part of the country, the West Coast, part of the Rockies, all the way up through Canada, up through Alaska, across Canada, around the Great Lakes, and down the Appalachian. Here in North Carolina, we are on the southern edge of their range, and we find them in our mountain counties, or those counties in green. And we typically find them at elevations of 2,000 feet or higher. There are a few pockets where I know they're found lower than 2,000, but as a general rule of thumb, they're at 2,000 feet and higher elevations. And they have their habitat you're mostly looking for is young forest. These are forest stands of 5 to 20 years of age, tend to be walls of thickets. For their wintering and foraging habitat, their nesting habitat, they will be in those young forests, but a little older age, closer to those 20 years of age, where there's a little bit more space on the ground for them to nest. And they'll typically nest under or against a log. a stump or a tree, something that gives them a little bit of protection from predators. Their brood habitat, or where they take their young, are areas where we call a lot of herbaceous ground cover, so where there's a lot of plant life on the ground in the understory. And here are some examples. You got those walls of saplings, those rhododendron and mountain laurel thickets, and then you can see a lot of those plants in the upper right. That's really good brood habitat for them. So ruffed grouse has a higher fiber diet than their quail cousins. So they'll eat more leaves, buds, and fruits. Some ferns, new shoots, woody plants, acorns, mountain laurel berries, greenbrier berries. And again, their chicks rely on insects for that high protein diet for their first few weeks of life. And grouse are pretty much solitary most of the year. They'll come briefly together breeding, but otherwise they kind of hang out by themselves. Males will defend a territory and attract a mate. They'll stand on a down log, a stump, or a rock. And then what they'll do is what we call drumming. It's where they beat their wings and cup it, and the air makes this drumming noise. And if you know what like a gas-powered engine kind of starting, if you remember, you pull and get it started, it starts slow and rapidly picks up speed. That's very similar to the drumming. And because it's so low in volume, most people feel it more than they hear it. And as you can see in this picture, this lovely gentleman's got his neck feathers all poofed up, showing off the ruff, that we get the name for the ruffed grouse. So, as I said, they nest on the ground, typically in a hollow out depression in the leaf litter, again against the base of a tree or a rock, something that gives them a little bit of protection. They'll lay 8 to 14 eggs and incubate, again, about those 3.5 weeks. Young are born precocial like chickens, eyes open, fluffy down, and moving. And then after 5 days of age, they're making short hopping flights. So they're growing up quite quickly. So the last bird we'll discuss is the American woodcock. So the woodcock is a short-legged shorebird. They're kind of round, plump birds with a really long, straight bill. They have a really large head, short, stubby neck, and a short, stubby tail. These have a cinnamon belly and breast with that gray collar kind of going over between their head and their wings. And these guys are even smaller than the quail. They're roughly kind of robin size, so baseball size and smaller. So they're pretty small birds. They're found on the East Coast here, and we have in parts of the state a year-round population that stay here year-round, as well as they will winter here in North Carolina. Now these guys, they like moist shrubby forest, forested areas, wet meadows, open stream and swamp thickets, old field and clearing, anywhere where the soil is really moist. And this is some ideas, big heavy thickets, wet soil, damp soil, thick clearings, and they really rely on these areas for a couple different reasons. And the main reason is because that's how they get their food, is by probing the soil with their long bills. So they need the softer soil that happens when it's moist. And that's because their main food source is earthworms and other invertebrates in the soil. These include snails, millipedes, spiders. You'll sometimes see videos of them. As they kind of walk along, they'll rock their body back and forth as they look kind of like they're dancing. And what people believe is the reason for this is by shifting their weight, it causes earthworms and other invertebrates in the ground to move, allowing the woodcock to sense it and be able to feed on them. They'll also eat a little bit of plants and sedges, but the vast majority of their diet is going to be those earthworms and other invertebrates. So woodcock are nocturnal, and they are generally solitary outside of the nesting season, but you can find them in small groups of 2 to 4 individuals. In springtime, males will do a courtship display at dawn and dusk. This is typically in a meadow or a brushy field. They'll stand on the ground and do a peep call. Then they'll fly very high up into the air and do a twisting, winding flight down, allowing the wind to go through their wingtips, creating a high whistling noise as they come back down to the ground. They will also nest on the ground in areas with dead leaves. They'll scrape a shallow depression and line it with dead leaves. They typically lay 4 eggs, and they'll incubate just about 3 weeks. Again, young are born precocial, so they're fluffy and down and moving. The female will feed the young the first few days, and then they're on their own for feeding. These guys can take short hopping flights at 2 weeks, and then by 5 weeks, they are completely independent and on their own. And that's just the brief overview of biology, and I'm going to hand it over and let Jim take over next. Jim, you're muted.
You there, Jim?
Yeah, I'm here. I just lost my mute button there. It
Happens
was
to the
on
best of us.
yeah, it was on the bottom of my screen and then it disappeared. So, well, thanks for that great overview, Hannah, and thanks again, Deet, for having me here tonight. I get pretty excited and fired up about talking about bird hunting. Um, and so my name's Jim Burris. Like Deet said, I'm the chairman and founder of the Bird Dog Society. Just a real quick plug for the Bird Dog Society. We are a nonprofit established to promote the physical and mental well-being of bird dogs. We do that through education, outreach, and events for bird dog owners. Basically, we want bird dog owners to be active and engaged with their dogs so they can live what we call the bird dog lifestyle. Um, if you want more information on the Bird Dog Society or interested in joining, you can go to birddogsociety.org for more information. We have events around the North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia area. And then we also do webinars and stuff like that as well. So, all right. So if you're on this webinar, you want to spend more time outdoors. At least that's what every hunter wants to accomplish is time in the woods. Well, there's some dilemmas that come with being a hunter. Do you go after big game where you kill one animal and your freezer's full for the year? Or do you want to go after something small where you get a lot of opportunities, a lot of action, and you don't have to sit still? And that's where bird hunters come in. But the thing of it is, you don't have to choose. Being an outdoorsman means you get to hunt all of them and you get to take advantage of all these different opportunities. And I bring that up because I'm an avid deer hunter, avid bird hunter, avid shed hunter. And when I'm bird hunting, I find some of my best deer hunting locations. When I'm deer hunting, I find some of my best bird hunting locations. And actually, the mainframe 10 point in the bottom right picture came off North Carolina public land from a spot that I found while I was woodcock hunting. So this all goes hand in hand, and the more time you spend in the woods, the better outdoorsman you become. So, oh, sorry, I didn't even realize the slide was still in here. So this is an example of some of the other webinars that you can take advantage of. These are from last year. This isn't updated here. But there's several organizations, including the Bird Dog Society, Her Upland, and basically most of the states in the US have some type of learn to hunt or educational program like that. That you can take advantage of webinars elsewhere. And I highly recommend people take advantage of other states' programs like this, particularly if you're planning on going there hunting, because you can get a lot of little tidbits from those type of free webinars. on your destination hunt and hopefully have a little bit more success when you go. So I'm going to kind of do an overview of birds, not in the same depth as what Hannah did. But these are our main birds in North Carolina that people think of when they think of upland birds. Of course, we have the woodcock there, mourning dove, ruffed grouse, ringneck pheasant, and bobwhite quail. Hannah did not mention a ringneck pheasant, but there is a small population of them in the Outer Banks of North Carolina, but getting to them is quite a challenge, and I'm not sure the status of that population. That might be a great question for Hannah at the end. But woodcock are becoming very popular around the state. You can find them throughout the state from east to west, north to south. I will say hunting them that your more consistent populations are going to be on the eastern half of the state. Once you go west, you find them there, but they could be there one day and gone the next, depending on weather patterns. Whereas on the East Coast, typically the weather patterns aren't persistent enough to where they push further south into South Carolina and Georgia. Usually once they arrive in the eastern half of the state, they stay there for the winter. Um, and then shorebirds. This is a area of interest for me. Because these are birds that people see on the regulations and they have little knowledge about their existence or how to hunt them. And those include the Wilson snipe, and yes, snipe are real. King rail, Virginia rail, Sawyer rail, clapper rail, and the moorhen. So in the regulations, you'll see a season on these birds, and oftentimes those seasons are the first seasons to come in. These are webless shorebirds, so they're kind of in that gray area between waterfowl and upland. I usually put them in the upland category because I can hunt them with a dog, and they actually do quite well hunting them with a dog. Some of the birds, like the king rail and the clapper rail, are more towards the coast, so you're limited on how much you can hunt them with a dog just because of oyster beds and sharks and stuff like that could be a problem for dogs that you have to account for. But the Wilson snipe, you can find that throughout the whole state. Virginia rail and Sawyer rail, you can find those throughout the majority of the state, but those are migratory birds as well, so they can be there in thick numbers or very sparse depending on weather patterns for that year. Now, if you're interested in being an upland hunter, I just wanted to bring up some of the other birds because typically the path that an upland hunter takes that I see is they get a dog, they go bird hunting, and then they just get consumed by hunting with their dog. And so they start traveling to other states. And just for in the grouse family, you have sharp-tailed grouse, duskies, sooties, sage, white-tailed ptarmigan, willow ptarmigan, rock ptarmigan, spruce grouse, Himalayan snowcock, and the greater prairie chicken. Those are all grouse species that you can hunt throughout the U.S. And then there's essentially a upland bird that you can hunt in every state in the U.S., including Alaska and Hawaii. And actually, those are two of your very exotic and adventurous states to go bird hunting in. Other out-of-state birds, scaled quail, oftentimes called blue quail, valley quail, oftentimes California quail, Mearns quail, aka Montezuma quail, Gambel's quail, mountain quail, Hungarian partridge, and chukar partridge. All these birds are huntable with dogs. And there's an emphasis on using dogs in this presentation, but I want to make sure that people know that you can hunt them without the dog. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But these birds are all create their own challenges. Some of them are mountain birds, some are desert birds, some are forest birds. One quick note, regardless of whether you're hunting in North Carolina or elsewhere, is know your regulations. Dee touched on some of this earlier. But whenever I travel the country, I lived in North Carolina for nearly 20 years, hunted a lot there, but I've also hunted in many states throughout the country, and the regulations are significantly different in each state. And so one thing to think about is blaze orange. Oftentimes in early seasons, the blaze orange requirements when you're strictly hunting only small game are different than they may be later in the year when other big game seasons are in play. So definitely keep that in mind when looking at the blaze orange regulations. Just because you're hunting quail doesn't mean you don't need to have significant blaze orange because of deer season. Gun and ammo restrictions. As Deep pointed out, some of these birds, particularly like your snipe and your woodcock and your rail, are around a lot of water habitats. Whenever I'm hunting those types of birds, I always use non-tox just because I don't want to have to keep switching out ammo. A lot of the non-tox varieties that you have out there now are very effective as compared to lead and much friendlier for the environment. HIP certification. That's a federal requirement required in every state. So when you go to hunt migratory birds, you need a HIP certification. And that's just a series of questions that the state will ask you so that they can help quantify how the population is doing, hunter effort, and all those kind of fun things. But you need to update that every year. It's free of charge. And when you go to Walmart or Bass Pro Shops or wherever you go to get your license, make them ask the questions, because if you are an upland hunter and you've put in significant time and harvest birds, that is good information for the biologist to have. Split seasons. Some birds have split seasons. Oftentimes, the first season will be before deer season, and then it'll close for a period of time for deer season, and then it'll reopen afterwards. Also, split seasons may be for migratory patterns and various different biological processes. So just keep in mind that a season may be in for a short period of time, then it goes out for a short period of time, then it may come back in. Good example of this is woodcock season up in Virginia has a split season. Species identification. This is typically not difficult if you're hunting for quail or grouse, but if you're hunting in an area where you might find snipe and woodcock in close proximity, this could be a factor. If you shoot for woodcock and think that they're snipe, then Will probably give you a ticket if he finds you. And so in the pictures here, we actually have a snipe on the right and a woodcock on the left. And then in the middle picture, snipes on the left, woodcocks on the right. You can see a difference in the size between those two birds, but you can also appreciate the similarities between those two birds. One easy way to look at it is a snipe is usually about half the size of a woodcock, and the black bars on the head of a snipe go front to back, where the black bars on a woodcock go left to right. Also, when you're looking at places to go hunting, be mindful of special regulation areas, areas that might require a permit to go hunting for upland birds or upland game, or special regulation areas like the Cooperative Upland Habitat Restoration Enhancement Units in North Carolina. So. Now you want to go bird hunting. And the way I have this presentation laid out, it's kind of like a progression. If you're interested in going bird hunting, you kind of need to put all these pieces together. And then we'll kind of finish that up with hopefully having a upland bird dinner at the end. But if you want to go bird hunting, you need a shotgun. Now you can hunt them with a 22 rimfire rifle. A lot of bird hunters may frown on that, but is perfectly legal. Particularly for rough grouse, sometimes you see that. It would be a real challenge to get a woodcock or quail or snipe with one. But typically a shotgun is used. You have break action, pump shotguns, and semi-auto shotguns. So you have a variety of different choices. 12, 16, 20, 28, and 410 gauges. Those gauges go down in size. So 12 gauge being the largest, 410 being the smallest. A lot of people tend to go in that middle range and use a 16, 20, or 28 when hunting upland birds. You have shotguns that have fixed chokes or removable chokes. Oftentimes, your older shotguns will have the fixed choke. It's important to know what kind of choke is in that gun, which we'll cover, I believe, on the next slide. And it's also important to know what each choke does, because if you have interchangeable chokes, that will dictate what you want to have in the gun. Chamber length. This is important because if you have a shotgun, particularly if it's one you're not familiar with, you want to know what the chamber length of that gun is. You don't want to have a 12 gauge that takes 2 3/4 inch shells and shove a 3-inch shell down it. that could be dangerous. So when you're looking at ammo, you want to know what your shotgun is and what it's capable to shoot. One of the biggest things on here is proper fit. You want to have a shotgun that will fit you properly. If it's too long or too short, you're not going to shoot it well, and you may also get a bruised cheekbone from the recoil. You also want to clean and maintain those shotguns, particularly if you're going through the brush for quail and grouse, or you're hunting for snipe or woodcock in the swamp. These guns can take a beating, and so you want to make sure they're well maintained. And just a note on shotguns, cheap isn't always good and expensive isn't always better. And basically what I mean by that is you don't want to get a cheap shotgun if it doesn't fit you and you can't shoot it well, or if it's unreliable. And also, an expensive shotgun isn't going to make it shoot better or make it fit better. So you want to really find the shotgun that fits you well, makes you happy, and that you're going to be able to shoot well and pack in the field. Ammo, just really quick, you have what's called toxic and non-toxic ammo. Your toxic is going to be your lead-based shot. Your non-toxic is going to be your steel, bismuth, tungsten, and stuff of that nature, various different alloys. And that's going to be what your pellets are made of. In North Carolina, for hunting upland birds, pellet size, you want to go with a 7, 7.5, or 8 shot. And that's going to basically take care of all your needs when it comes to upland birds in North Carolina. Now, if you do go after the ringneck pheasant in the Outer Banks, you're probably going to want a 5 or 6 shot on those. But for all the other birds, 7.5 is a really good intermediate. When you're picking out ammo, two things you want to look at is velocity and payload. And velocity, you'll have what are high velocity rounds where the pellets are coming out at about 1,400 feet per second. And then payload is the amount of weight of the shot in the shell. So oftentimes it's in that 1 ounce range. So some of your smaller guns, like your 410, may be in a 3/4 ounce payload, whereas your 12 gauge, being a bigger bore gun, may be in that 1.25 ounce payload. But if you have a higher velocity ammo with a higher payload, it's going to have more recoil. And the thing about recoil is if you are sensitive to it, it may cause you to start flinching and missing a lot of birds. But also, a lot of times these birds, if you're shooting them on the wing, require a follow-up shot. Maybe you wound a bird, or maybe you just flat out miss it and you want a second shot. The more recoil and payload you're putting down range, the longer it's going to take you to get back on target for that second follow-up shot. And just for reference, in this photo, we got 4 snipe in the middle. On the right, we got a Virginia rail, and on the left, we got a Sawyer rail. So you can kind of see the size of these birds. Some of the Sawyers can be really small. And the Sawyer and the Virginia rail are not really strong flyers. So if you do find those, they're pretty easy to shoot on the wing. Whereas snipe, on the other hand, will humble your shooting for sure. Choke tubes. So you have 5 main restrictions of chokes: cylinder, improved cylinder, modified, improved modified, and full. Now to the right of that list, you'll see hash marks: 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Those hash marks are fairly standard across the industry, as in 1 hash mark is a full choke and 5 is a cylinder choke. There are a few manufacturers where that is different, so you always want to check the size of your choke tube. In fixed choke shotguns, you will not have those hash marks, and so you need to look on the barrel for the restriction, and it typically will tell you whether it's a cylinder, approved cylinder, modified, so forth. And on the illustration on the left, you can kind of see that the pattern on these more open chokes, like your cylinder and improved cylinder, are more open. And so they have a shorter effective range. Whereas a full choke, the pattern of the pellets is much tighter, and that allows it to be shot at a further range. Now, when you think about upland birds, particularly your woodcock and your grouse and your quail, most of your shots are going to be within that 25-yard range. Those birds come out fast. There's a lot of obstructions. And as you look, the improved cylinder is still very effective at 25 yards, and you got basically a 32-inch shot pattern. And so it's going to be a lot easier to hit a bird on the wing with an improved cylinder choke than a full choke. If you shot a small bird at 25 yards with a full choke, if you hit it square, you can damage some of the meat. Also, going back, in general terms, for upland bird hunting, improved cylinder and modified are often the most common chokes used, particularly in North Carolina. A lot of people use cylinder and improved cylinder as their two choices. And when I say two choices, a lot of people hunt with double barrel shotguns. If you only have a single barrel, then IC or mod would be kind of what you would want to use there. Some of that depends on how finicky the birds are and how tight the cover is and time of season, stuff like that. So you can really get up and go down the rabbit hole with some of these as far as shotguns and ammo and pellet material and stuff like that. But just sticking to the basics, you can start to dial that in after you get out there in the woods and find a few birds. And kind of the last thing on here, depending whether you hunt with a dog or no dog, that's also going to dictate kind of what kind of choke you have, because with a dog, you may be able to get closer to those birds, or you may not be able to get as close to the bird, depending on what kind of bird you're hunting and what kind of cover you're looking at. Oftentimes, particularly something like woodcock with a dog, you can get really close to that bird, and so the more open chokes for a woodcock would be what you would want. But you may also find woodcock in sparse cover, and they're going to get up a little bit sooner. Essential gear. And so one thing to keep in mind is with woodcock and quail and grouse and stuff like that, oftentimes you're going through very thick successional forest, a lot of branches. So it's recommended to have safety or shooter's glasses. You can see on the right, sometimes that applies to the dog too. Some dogs are very accident prone, and stick to the eye can ruin the day for you and your dog. Hearing protection. There's various different kinds of protection out on the market now. You have passive options and electronic options. Passive options are kind of the ones that you just stick over or in your ears and forget about it. Electronic options are kind of newer on the market. They've only been around for a while, but they can actually help enhance your hearing when you're not shooting. So you might actually be able to hear some of these birds flush a little bit better. One downfall with the electronic ones, sometimes the directional hearing, telling what direction the flush comes from, may be a little bit more of a challenge, depending on what ones you use. Brush pants, you're going to be in the briars and in the brush, so a good pair of brush pants is needed. These Duluth Fire Hose briar pants are actually my preferred pants for hunting North Carolina. North Carolina is blessed with some gnarly briars and brush that will reach up and grab you and will not let go. So these Duluth pants are heavy enough to bust through that brush and protect your legs and not tear up. There's a lot of thinner upland pants that you can get, but those don't work very well in North Carolina, I can tell you that. A lot of the other states where the brush isn't quite as nasty, those thinner pants are actually really nice. Good boots. Good rubber boots is very handy when hunting woodcock and snipe and stuff like that where the ground is often wet. Even rough grouse. Oftentimes you're crossing streams, you're going through muddy areas and stuff like that, because a lot of times where that water is also where a lot of the vegetation grows that the grouse find food on. So good rubber boots is good. At the very least, you want a good pair of waterproof boots. And because of the type of brush you're going through, you may also want a pair of gloves, just to protect your hands in case you grab a hold of something that's got some stickers on it. If you go out hunting and you do harvest some game, you're going to want some kind of carrying system. And there's a lot of different options on the market. You have backpack style, straps or strapless vest, waist belts, and also think about gear that you might need for your dog. And then also, there's other things that you may have, just like a standard backpack that might work. And sometimes I've seen people use like carpenter belts to hunt doves with. So there's various things, but you do want to think about, because you go out in the woods and you are lucky and you get your 3 grouse or your 3 woodcock, you want to have a convenient way to get them out of the woods. Essential items to carry. Whenever I'm going in the woods, I want some ways to communicate. A cell phone is obviously the thing that people have on them the most, but a whistle can also come in very handy in case you drop your cell phone in the swamp or maybe the battery goes dead. Also a satellite uplink, and there's a lot of devices now, including some of the newer iPhones, that you can actually send text messages via satellite link. There's also products from various vendors like Garmin and stuff like that, to where you can send for help via satellite uplink and text. Now I'm mentioning several different vendors and products on here. I'm not sponsored or not endorsed by any of those. Those are just products that I have found success with over the years. Navigation, having a compass on you is very handy, but you also need to know how to use the compass. So basic skills can be learned oftentimes online, and so having a compass so you can know your directions will become handy in case something happens with your cell phone. Most people use a GPS mapping system on their cell phone nowadays, but you don't want to become completely reliant on that. Actually, there's some areas in the Midwest and stuff where there's some weird magnetic fields and copper deposit or iron deposits and stuff like that that can mess with some of your GPSs. So water. This is a big one, particularly early season. You want to have enough water for you and your dog. Um, I don't know. I can't tell you how many times I've been out in the field and used all my dog's water for my dog and then give him my water. So this is a thing that you want to pack as much water as you comfortably can and be realistic about the how long you're going to be out there and the temperatures you might experience on your hunt. First aid kit. You want some basic first aid for you and your dog, particularly your dog. If they are out in the woods, they are running through the brush at a very fast pace and oftentimes don't have a sense of self-protection like we would. And obviously, like I said earlier, you can hunt without a dog. But if you do have a dog, it makes things a lot easier because the dog can help you find the birds. And also, a big one that is often overlooked until you actually start hunting is the dog is going to help you retrieve the birds. If you go out without a dog, which can be done, um, and you find a bird and you shoot it, particularly a grouse or a woodcock, it could be very challenging to find that brown marbled bird in a bunch of dead leaves. In fact, I've hunted behind several people that have not had a dog during woodcock flights, and my dog and I go in and we get a limit of birds, and I never fire a shot because of the wounded birds that are left behind. So if you hunt without a dog for birds, when you hit a bird, don't try for a second bird. As soon as you hit a bird and it falls, focus on where that bird hits the ground and walk straight to it without taking your eyes off of it. And then you should be able to find that bird or at least be in close proximity. As soon as you take off your eyes off the spot where the bird fell, you're probably not going to find that bird. Even with a dog, sometimes finding a bird can be a challenge, and sometimes you may have to come back 20 minutes afterwards so a scent cone can develop so your dog can smell where that bird went down. Dogs come in two main flavors. You have pointers and flushers. Your flushers are going to hunt close to the hunter, and they are going to flush the bird for you. Hunting with a flusher means the hunter has to stay ready at all times because a bird can flush at any second. And typically shots with those birds are going to be fairly close, but have a small window in order to take the shot. Pointing dogs will actually smell the bird and then go into what's called a point. At that point, once a dog establishes a point, the hunter will easily go in and be in a ready position, and the hunter will flush the bird. And then at that point, the hunter will take the shot. There is some hunters that can get the best of both worlds. They will find the bird with a pointing dog and then use a flushing dog to go in and flush after it's been pointed. And actually on the right, that's my dog Manu on point, and I'm on the other end of his nose, and the bird is in between us. So I'm there with a camera taking a picture of the woodcock there in the brush on that point. There's other resources too. When you get into upland bird hunting, it can be a little bit of a daunting task, particularly if you have a new dog and you've never done it before. There's a lot of other resources around. I've already mentioned the Bird Dog Society. Her Upland is a female-focused organization. North American Versatile Hunting Dogs, AKC and UKC, are also other organizations that do education and outreach for dog owners. They will help with how to train dog, what to do with first aid kits and how to use them, recommendations for gear. They're also a great place to just to be a part of a community to where you can have hunting partners or get encouragement or advice on how to train a dog. There's also things to keep in mind with about snakes, skunks, and porcupines that these organizations can help you be prepared for. Oftentimes, whenever I run into new bird hunters with a new dog, some of their biggest fears are the unknowns about taking their dog in the woods. Well, what if I run into a snake? Or what if I run into a porcupine? And so doing some education and preparing yourself for that will give you more confidence to take your dog in the woods. All right, so now you're ready. You have everything you need and you're ready to go hunting. Where do you go? Well, like Deet said, let your fingers do the walking. First, go online, and the state of North Carolina has some excellent resources for public land where you can go out with or without a dog and reasonably find wild birds. I can tell you, I visited many of these public lands over the years, and traveling the country, I will give a plug to the NC Wildlife Resources Commission because the public lands in North Carolina are some of the best that I've hunted around the country as far as how well they are maintained. Once you start to narrow in on a place you can go hunt, you want to start looking for suitable habitat within that area. There's various different tools that you can use. Google Earth, looking at satellite imagery to see how dense or sparse cover is. Onyx Maps can show you property lines and various different details. Scout and Hunt, that's actually what's on the phone in the middle. It'll tell you the different types of vegetation and trees that are in an area. And so you can start to learn what areas might be suitable for what birds. And some of that stuff that Hannah went over is important for that because you find the right habitat and you'll find the birds. Maryland Bird App, that's an app you can download for free on your phone. And it will listen to the vocal sounds of birds and actually tell you what species those are. And if you're not familiar with what a woodcock peent is, the Maryland Bird app is a great way that you can pull that app up and it will confirm whether you're listening to a tree frog or a woodcock. Also, woodcock migration maps. If you're a woodcock hunter, you've probably already found this, but if not, there's often a migratory map that you can find online to show you where woodcock are migrating. If you look in the bottom right picture, that's actually a woodcock with a GPS transmitter on its back, and that's how we are able to capture that data. Some of these birds are actually tagged in North Carolina, and then in the spring travel all the way up to Labrador and Maine and Nova Scotia, and then return in the winter. And so those migrations, you can track those, and that gives you an idea of when birds are in your area. And the last comment here, no substitute for windshield time or boots on the ground. The more time you spend in the woods, the more you're going to understand what good habitat looks like for each of these species. But also, if you're looking for habitat for woodcock and all of a sudden you come into good grouse cover or good snipe cover or quail cover, you need to be able to identify that. And then mark that on your maps or take a note of it and then go back and hunt it at a later time. Some of my better spots are when I call an audible, like I'm woodcock hunting and I find snipe habitat, or I'm quail hunting and I find woodcock habitat. So a little bit about the different types of habitat, because finding good habitat is a very important key to success. With woodcock, you want high stem density or early successional forest. You want a damp to wet soil. You want organically rich soils. So you want a soil where you can reasonably find a lot of worms in it. So one thing you can do is just kick over a few rocks or knock over a few or push over a few limbs or dead trees or something like that and see if you find a bunch of worms. If you do, then that's pretty good habitat. A lot of times sandy soils and clay soils are not the best for woodcock because they're not the best for worms. That doesn't mean you can't find them in those habitats. Woodcock behavior, they feed almost exclusively on worms. They hold very tight, so they're great for dog work, especially for a young dog. They do have daily migrations between feeding grounds and their day cover. So a lot of times they're in a very thick cover during the day, and then at night they may fly out into an ag field or some kind of open area to feed during the night, and then fly back in before the sun comes up in the morning. And so one thing about that is the painting sound. Oftentimes they do that late in the evening. So if you're scouting for birds and you're in an area late in the evening, instead of loading up in the truck and driving off, just sit on the tailgate for a while and listen for that painting sound from the woodcock, and that'll confirm whether there's woodcock in the area. When woodcock flush, they give a twitter sound, very similar to what they do during the sky dance that Hannah mentioned earlier. So that twitter sound is one way to also know that you've flushed a woodcock, because sometimes you hear that twitter sound and the bird flies away, but you never actually see the bird. And then looking for woodcock droppings. In this middle picture, that's what woodcock droppings looks like. Oftentimes it's called whitewash. And what you'll notice is it's always kind of in this circular pattern, but there's no splatter around the edges of it. If you think about birds up in trees and stuff like that, if they poop on the ground, there's usually some splatter coming from the poop, whereas woodcock, their butts are only about an inch off the ground, so you don't have any splatter. Interesting fact, bird poop, what you're looking at there, the white part is actually bird urine. The brown grayish part is actually the poop. So they poop and pee at the same time, but the white is actually bird pee. Nesting. So if you do have dogs or you're an avid outdoorsman and you're in the woods in North Carolina from March to mid-April, constantly be on the lookout for woodcock nesting. Particularly if you have a dog can crush the eggs or kill the chicks. So if you find nesting woodcock, get your dog out of the area and try to leave those birds alone, because once the bird comes off the nest, then they're susceptible to predation. So always keep that in mind. Weather patterns can kind of shift that nesting season up or back a little bit each spring too. So a little bit about quail habitat here. Like Hannah said, kind of forbs, fruits, insects, dense cover. And oftentimes you'll find them where there's a lot of plant diversity. And so I won't go into that too much. With woodcock, or excuse me, with quail though, definitely kind of spend a lot of time looking, because quail hunting is one of those things where you can hunt for 4 or 5 hours and not find a bird. Then all of a sudden you find 2 coveys really quick, and then the action goes from 0 to fast paced all of a sudden. So definitely keep after it with the quail and try to cover a lot of territory. Quail being covey birds, these are kind of my personal thoughts when hunting quail. Whenever I flush a covey of bobwhite quail, I want that covey to have at least 6 to 8 birds in it before I even consider taking a shot. If I think that there's fewer birds, or there's only 6 birds or something like that, most of the time I don't ever raise the gun. I just watch them fly away and I take a dog and move them out of the area and go hunt for a bigger covey. And the reason for that is a lot of studies show that the smaller the covey, the less likely they are to survive the off season or the winter. And so the bigger the covey, then the more pressure you can put on them. So if you found a covey of 14 birds, I would not hesitate to take a double, take 2 birds out of there. But if you find a covey of birds that are in that 7, 8, 9 range, take a bird and move on and try to find another covey. You know, hunting upland birds is one of the most biggest calorie deficits of hunting that you'll probably find. Also, when you're out, listen for those bobwhite quail calls. particularly when you bust up a covey, you'll start to hear those birds come back together. So you'll hear them calling, and I'll give you a clue where to go do follow-ups. They have a relatively small home range, but if you flush a covey a few times or they've been disturbed a few times, they will get up and move. Oftentimes they feed in the morning and evening, and then they get in those groups during the day and up at night. Oftentimes you'll see them out on the roads getting gravel or grit. And so driving the roads early in the morning, if there's quail around, sometimes you'll see them scamper across the road and up in front of your truck. Grouse habitat. These are some images of some grouse habitat. You're looking for berries on the ground. You're looking for thick stem density. You're also looking for good diversity. If you can look at that bigger picture, that's just a gnarly entanglement of greenbriers and various different vines. Wild grapes are a favorite of ruffed grouse, but they will eat acorns and beech nuts and evergreens and succulents. And as Hannah said, you typically find a ruffed grouse in higher elevations. You can find them in lower creek bottoms and river bottoms, but those are usually very isolated birds. I typically try to target areas of 2,500 feet or higher. If you can find those kind of ranges, then the vegetation type changes, and that's usually the type of vegetation you're looking for these ruffed grouse. So ruffed grouse, when you do see one or find one, pay attention to kind of what habitat the bird is in, because usually the type of habitat one ruffed grouse is using, the next ruffed grouse will also use. And you'll also see them out on the roads gritting and stuff like that. So windshield time and boots on the ground can, even before and after season, is a great way to figure out good hunting grounds. And if you are fortunate enough to find a ruffed grouse, one of the best things you could do to identify where you might find more is to open up the crop of that bird. And so here is actually a ruffed grouse that was harvested. This is the crop of the bird, and this is where it holds
Wouldn't she?
food before it's digested. And you can see that crop is just plumb full of different vegetation, berries, and leaves. And so that's going to help you clue into what kind of vegetation those birds are keyed in on.
Hazel green.
And so all your grouse species are going to have a crop like that. And so you can open it up and see what they've been feeding on. Grouse will kind of get into more groups during the winter. Early season, they're more solitary, but in the winter, sometimes you get wintering groups, particularly around grapevines where you have some food source where you may find 10 to 20 birds in one area. They tend to tolerate less pressure. And actually, on the bottom right, that's the grouse drumming. So that's what you'll hear in the springtime and sometimes in the fall to let you know grouse are in the area. And a little bit of snow on the ground is a great way to find grouse. Snipe habitat, they like to have their feet wet, but not their bellies. So you're looking for 1 to 4 inches of water. Snipe are an underappreciated bird. They're about half the size of a woodcock and twice as fast. But you can get 8 of them a day. If you can get 8 woodcock in a day, you are considered a sniper because you are very good with a shotgun and shooting birds on the wing. And so they, like woodcock, they eat primarily worms, but they will also eat insect larvae and crustaceans and stuff like that. Actually, the video on the left is from public game lands that have been waterfowl that have been flooded, and you can see all the worms that are in some of these waterfowl impoundments, and that's what the sniper in there eating. But you're looking for various flooded grass, tidal grasses, and woodcock, they don't tolerate bad dog work. And so you will have to have a steady dog, and they're a great training bird because when woodcock populations are in, you may get 200 flushes in a day. But again, they're kind of difficult to hit on the wing, but you don't have to deal with vegetation and brush. Snipe behavior, they're usually solitary or in loose groups. They usually arrive just before woodcock. They'll often fly high in a circle pattern, and so you can oftentimes see where they'll land. They can be decoyed. I've never tried that. But I typically just hunt them with the dog. And sniper, one of those things that you tell people you go and snipe hunting, you're like, oh, is that even real? They're definitely real. And one of the things I want to tell people about bird hunting is just stay outside in the woods and in the field. And if you walk enough and you're out there long enough, you're going to find one of those mythical birds, whether it's a grouse or a woodcock or a quail. And then once you find that first one, everyone after that is a lot easier. Shooting technique, just real quick on that. Your forest birds, like your bob whites and woodcock and grouse, are going to be more your snap shooting because you're going to have a very small window to get a shot off at those birds. As best you can, just ignore the trees and the brush. Just pull up and shoot. Obviously, you want to be safe when you pull up and shoot, but you want your instincts to take over. And one way to learn how to do snap shooting is to practice your gun mounting. You can have various laser sights on your gun to practice that. And there's techniques where you can mount your gun, obviously not loaded, and point at the corner of where the wall and the ceiling of a room meet, and just continually mount your gun looking at that corner. And the sights on your gun will eventually just line up to where when you mount your gun, your sight is always on that corner point. And that's one great way to mount your gun. In the wintertime, when you can't bird hunt, if you do 20 or 30 gun mounts a day, you'll be shocked at how well that improves your shooting. Other birds, like your prairie birds and open birds like snipe that you don't have the cover to deal with, that's more methodical shooting. You want to take your time on those birds. There's no obstructions. And as long as you have good ammo, then you should have a decent shot at the bird. If you try to rush a bird in open cover, a lot of times you're giving up the opportunity for the prime shooting. So focus on the bird, not on your sights. This is hard for new people to do, but and that's where the practice your gun mounting comes into play. When a bird gets up, you want to focus solely on that bird. You don't want to think about too much about lead time and all that. If you're focused on primarily the head of the bird, your brain will do all the calculations for you. And when it feels right, you pull the trigger. And that's something where the more you do it, the more comfortable you'll get with it. One note about low flying birds, especially if you're hunting with a hunting partner or a dog, don't shoot at low flying birds. One way to think about it is if you see daylight under the bird, it's safe to shoot. If that bird doesn't crack the horizon, it's not a safe bird to shoot. And ground swatting is what we call shooting birds on the ground, is legal. But if you're hunting with someone that has a dog, do not shoot at birds on the ground. That's a great way to shoot someone's dog, and we certainly don't want that. So, and again, don't become discouraged. The habitat is a big part. You find the right habitat and you'll find birds, but sometimes you can have to spend a lot of time in the field to find that right habitat. Just to wrap things up, once you get a bird, how do you take care of it? These smaller birds, especially the red meat birds, if they're not badly shot up, I'll just put them in a freezer bag whole and freeze them until I get enough birds to make a meal out of, and then I will defrost them and clean them right before I'm ready to eat them. If I'm successful and I get a limit or something and I want to eat them relatively quickly, a lot of times I will pluck the birds, and those are 2 roasted woodcock in the bottom left corner. In the top middle, that's a woodcock, and in the middle you got one lonely bobwhite quail. So you can see a difference between the red meat of the migratory birds and the white meat of the quail. And then oftentimes, especially with woodcock, the leg meat will cook differently than the breast meat. So sometimes you may want to keep the meats separate. For woodcock, the breast meat is very red, the leg meat is kind of white, so they have different cook times. But the red meat, you want to cook them hot and fast. You don't want to overcook them. A lot of times people say that red meat birds kind of taste like dirt, or in woodcock's case, taste like worms, but those are usually cases where the bird is overcooked. You actually want them pink in the middle. So I always hunt to eat, and I always experiment with different ways to fix the birds. Got the woodcock there again on the left. On the top, that is actually fettuccine with homemade fettuccine and Alfredo sauce with cubed up snipe and woodcock. We got woodcock chili in the bottom. And one of my favorite things to do is tacos. These red meat birds, sometimes the only time I ever overcook the meat is when I want a good firm texture to the meat. So when I'm doing tacos, I will cube them up in a lot smaller chunks. Make sure they're well done so that way they're more firm, and then they make great tacos. And with that, I will take any questions. That's my dog there, Manu, with a gobbler turkey that he found in the woods and retrieved to me. I don't know what killed it, but it was fun seeing him retrieve a turkey. Anyway, if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email. Or if you want to learn more about the Bird Dog Society, here's the website. And again, I want to appreciate or thank the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission for doing this Learn to Hunt webinar and inviting us to speak.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Lots of good information. So now I'm going to take a look up here and see if we have any questions. I don't see any right now. And of course, I did tell folks to kind of wait until we had finished our presentation. Obviously, if everybody did so well that we don't have any questions, that's fine too. But we do have some time. Anything anybody want to add? I guess I'm thinking of William, our officer here tonight. I know a lot of times in my regulations slide, I will say, but like when it comes to deer hunting, I'll say, but first, what is the most common deer hunting related violation? So Officer Lanton, can you offer any like small game relative to upland game? Is there any violation that stands out? Because obviously with small game species, there's no tagging requirement, and that's a big one with big game. So can you think of anything offhand maybe that we missed or overlooked or that, for upland game?
I guess one of the bigger questions we get, a lot of times with bird hunting is, does my shotgun need to be plugged? And if you're hunting a bobwhite quail, your gun does not need to be plugged. And by being plugged, I mean the gun is capable of holding or not holding more than 3 shells. So a plug shotgun would not be able to hold more than 3 shells. That's 1 in the chamber and 2 in the magazine. But if you're hunting migratory birds, such as the snipe or the woodcock, it's going to require a plug. Whereas a quail is simply an upland bird, you would not be required to have a plug in the gun. So, and I guess the other thing too is it's just always important to remember that wild birds cannot be taken with any kind of bait or grain or salt on the ground. So maybe if somebody thought, hey, I know where there's good habitat, I want to try to sweeten the pot. Obviously, that would probably not be a good thing to do because it would put you in a violation of the law.
Awesome. Good points. Okay, so we do have a question here. What are we supposed to do if we accidentally shoot an upland bird off season? I didn't realize snipe and woodcock look so much alike. Officer Lanton, take that one.
I think it goes back to what Hannah and Jim said is that ID is just very critical. And, I'll be very upfront with you, when I'm hesitant to snipe hunt when the woodcock season's not in because I don't want to put myself in that position. But I've also not had a lot of experience with snipe hunting. So I think it goes back to that experience in the field and just being able to ID those birds correctly. If Jim or Hannah want to jump in, either one, I think they could probably make a great point. But the most important point I could make is don't put yourself in that position where you're going to potentially shoot the wrong bird, because it still would be a violation of the law either way.
And let me just add to that, and if Jim has something, he can come up. It kind of reminds me of the situation where if you're hunting near posted land when you're deer or turkey hunting, don't put yourself in that position, especially if you don't have permission to be on that private land, should that animal run into it. So yes, that's a great point. Try to avoid that. Jim, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I was just gonna say when it comes to snipe and woodcock, your snipe are going to be in more open areas. They're typically not going to be in wooded vegetation, whereas that's kind of where you're going to find your woodcock. Where you might find some overlap is particularly on the edges, to where you have open areas that are flooded or very moist. Those edges can hold woodcock or have snipe close to them. But once you've seen a few of those birds get up, you can tell the difference between a woodcock and a snipe fairly easily. But if you're in doubt, just don't shoot them until you are able to get confident that you can identify them on the wing. But oftentimes, once you start to learn the habitat, you have a pretty good idea when that bird flushes what you're going to get. But yeah, that Twitter sound when the woodcock get up is a big part of it. The snipe will have kind of a little tweet kind of sound when they get up. But again, your snipe are going to be about half the size and twice as fast, and your woodcock are going to be twice as big and half as fast, I guess. So once you've seen a few of each get up, it's actually pretty easy to identify them on the wing.
All excellent points. Great. Yeah. So we shouldn't have any mistaken for game kills. Yes. Okay. Not seeing any questions here. So, Hannah, do you have anything you want to add? And obviously, shortly after any closing comments, we can close if we don't get any more questions. So, yeah, go ahead. Anything to add?
No, I don't like it is small game focuses on habitat. So again, habitat is where you're going to find those species when you're out hunting.
Great, great. Always good. Yes, whether you're, yeah, whatever species hunting. And well, I will just say, and of course I'll give it around. I'll give it around for anybody else that has any final comments. Yeah, every event here is a last one. It's been very humbling. It's been a very great run. I hope to see some of you out there in the field or even at some future workshops. We do have a few things going on yet. Be safe, be ethical, and even when it comes to like identifying species, keep in mind, I've written in journals for like over 30 years now, actually turning it into something much bigger. And I used to always use the term success. I had success today, success. But the reality is a hunt isn't measured, but measured in harvest. Harvest isn't the only success. There's so much more joy. So for example, getting to that bird, if you're not sure, just don't shoot. You're still having a great time. You'll still get opportunities to take game, but success is far more than the harvest. So be safe out there, be ethical. Again, yeah, thanks for being part of this program. Thank you, Jim, for a great presentation, for Hannah always being available and a great presentation as our upland game bird biologist, and also William Layton, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I think I said Latin before. One of the excellent officers that has a great personality for being an officer. I always thought I would have made a lousy officer because I tend to be opinionated and a little bit too forward. He's a very kind person, but as he pointed out to me the other day, he can beef it up when he has to, right, William?
That's right. You try to keep it in the bag and use it very sparingly, only as needed.
That's right. That's right. So any closing comments from my panelists? And I guess we'll close for tonight. We'll close a little bit early. Everybody did such a great job. We didn't need a lot of questions. So any closing comments from my panelists?
I was just gonna say when you were talking about, just kind of get out there and enjoy the hunt. In this photo, which is one of my favorite photos, hunting with my dog, I'm in high up in the Rocky Mountains hunting white-tailed ptarmigan, and I hunted for 5 days and never harvested a bird, but that's still one of my favorite all-time trips that I've ever done with my dog. So it's a very good point, and I just preach, get out there and cover some ground and see what you find.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anything else from anyone else?
Yeah, Dean, I would just echo your and Jim's sentiments. Be safe, be ethical, and share your passion with those around you. Share it with a future generation because you know, if we fail to share this sport with other people, they're going to find something else to do with their time. So, you know, the knowledge and passion we have is very important for the success of hunting in the future.
Thank you for that. And I will say too, with our officers, you know, I grew up in a time in Pennsylvania where we really had some hard nose, you know, typically referred to as game wardens back then, that they were looking to ticket people. Our officers by far are all about educating the public. And granted, if you commit a violation that doesn't pass the straight face test, they're going to come down on you, but they're out there to educate the people. They know that there's a lot of new hunters out there. So they're a great bunch of folks. Jim, I'm kind of sorry that you're out of state, even though you're up there in great grouse habitat, no doubt. And I really do appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to be here tonight. And you as well, Hannah, and you, William. So, okay, folks, we're going to close it up because otherwise I'll keep yakking. You folks have a great night. Be safe. Take care, and hope to see you in the field, and hope to see you at future programming too. So check Go Outdoors. We still have some stuff going on. So with that, I'm going to bid you all a good night. I'm going to close down, and usually takes about 17 clicks. We'll get there. Everybody take care. Again, thanks to my panelists, and everyone else have a great night. Thank you.